3 minutes. In 3 minutes, he would sign away everything. Emma Walsh's hand trembled on the water pitcher as she watched the Japanese CEO reach for the pen. Around the candlelit table at Silverstone Estate, laughter erupted, cruel, careless laughter that made her jaw clench. Hiroshi Tanaka sat alone at the far end, small and dignified in his charcoal suit, surrounded by Americans who spoke about him as if he were deaf, not just quiet. "Just sign here," Marcus Blackwell urged, sliding the contract closer. "Simple partnership. You understand, right?" Emma saw it clearly. Page 27, Clause 47B, transfer of intellectual property registered under K. Tanaka, his dead wife's name. They were stealing from a widower. Her manager's warning echoed, "Stay invisible, Walsh." But Yuki-san's voice was louder. "Silence in the face of wrong is participation in wrong." Emma set down the pitcher. Every head turned. She walked toward Hiroshi, her heart a war drum, and bowed deeply in the traditional Japanese way. Then she spoke. "Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story." Emma, Catherine Walsh, had learned early that the world had no mercy for poor girls from Appalachia. At 29, she carried that lesson in the burn scar on her left hand, the worn soles of her work shoes, and the permanent ache in her lower back from years of bending, serving, disappearing. Her studio apartment in Napa Valley cost $850 monthly, 70% of her server's salary. Each morning she woke to the same view. A faded photograph of an elderly Japanese woman taped to the wall, a rent notice on the refrigerator, and instant ramen in the cupboard. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. The holy trinity of the working poor. The photograph showed Yuki Matsumoto, the woman who had saved Emma's life 11 years ago. Emma had been 18 then, freshly run from West Virginia with $43 and a duffel bag of shame. Her mother had died 6 years earlier in a coal mine collapse. Her father had drowned his grief in bottles and rage. The day Emma turned 16, she walked out with nothing but survival instinct and a promise whispered to her mother's grave. "I'll be better than this." Los Angeles had chewed her up and spit her out twice before Yuki found her. Or perhaps Yuki had seen her, which was different. The tiny restaurant in Little Tokyo had smelled of miso and redemption. Yuki had taken one look at the hollow-eyed girl begging for dishwashing work and said simply, "You start now. I teach you everything." Everything had meant more than cooking and serving. Yuki taught Japanese language, culture, philosophy. "Language is bridge, Emma-chan," she would say, her weathered hands folding origami between customers. "But respect is foundation. Without respect, bridge collapses." For 3 years, Emma had lived in Yuki's spare room, learned to bow properly, studied hiragana late into the night, and discovered that kindness existed outside fairy tales. Then cancer had stolen Yuki too. Emma had held her hand in the hospital, watching the woman who had become her second mother fade like morning mist. Yuki's final words, "Emma-chan, you have kind heart. Don't let world make you hard. Promise me." Emma had promised through tears. 8 years later, she still kept that promise, though it cost her daily. Now, at Silverstone Estate, she served wine to people who never saw her face. She was a uniform, a function, invisible labor. The general manager, Gerald Morrison, had been clear during orientation. "Our VIP guests don't want to remember you exist. Pour, clear, disappear." Emma had perfected the art of disappearing. Until tonight. Tonight, she had been assigned to the Founders Hall, where a private dinner was underway. 20 guests, crystal stemware, $500 wine bottles. The kind of room where her yearly salary was less than the floral arrangements. And at the far end of the long table, looking impossibly small among the loud Americans, sat Hiroshi Tanaka. The evening had begun innocently enough at 7 o'clock with the arrival of guests in expensive cars that crunched over the gravel drive. Emma had watched from the service entrance as men in tailored suits and women in silk emerged, their laughter already lubricated by pre-dinner cocktails. The Founders Hall was Silverstone Estate's crown jewel, a private dining room with vaulted ceilings, walls of honey-colored oak, and windows overlooking endless rows of grapevines that glowed amber in the October sunset. Marcus Blackwell had arrived first, as hosts do, his presence filling the room like expensive cologne. At 52, he possessed the particular confidence of men who had never been told no. His handshake was crushing, his laugh booming, his gestures expansive. Beside him, his wife Victoria moved with the calculated grace of someone who had clawed her way to the top and had no intention of sliding back down. Her smile never quite reached her eyes. Hiroshi Tanaka arrived precisely at 7:15 with his translator, Thomas Reed. Emma had been refilling wine glasses when they entered, and something made her pause. Perhaps it was the contrast. Where Marcus dominated space, Hiroshi occupied it quietly. He was small in stature, 58 years old, with silver threading through his dark hair at the temples. He wore a charcoal suit that was clearly expensive but understated, and on his left hand a wedding ring that looked worn from years of wearing. Emma noticed the ring because she noticed details other people missed. It was a survival skill from childhood, knowing when her father was 3 drinks in versus 5, reading the subtle signs that meant run or hide. She had learned to observe without being observed, to understand without being acknowledged. Marcus's greeting had been loud and theatrical. Hiroshi. "Welcome, welcome to wine country." He clapped Hiroshi on the shoulder with enough force to make the smaller man step forward slightly. "We're going to have a great evening. Life-changing evening." Hiroshi had bowed slightly, his smile polite. When he spoke, his English was heavily accented and halting. "Thank you for invitation. Very kind." Thomas Reed, the translator, was a nervous man in his late 60s with sweat already beading on his forehead despite the room's comfortable temperature. He translated rapidly in Japanese, and Hiroshi responded in his native language before Thomas rendered it back to English. "Mr. Tanaka is honored by your hospitality and looks forward to discussing the partnership." The other guests were a mixture of investors and business associates, people whose names Emma didn't catch and whose faces blurred together in her practiced invisibility. They took their seats along the massive table, Marcus at the head like a king holding court, Victoria at his right hand, and Hiroshi positioned at the far end, a subtle power play that Emma recognized immediately. Gerald Morrison had cornered Emma before service began, his breath smelling of mints meant to cover cigarettes. "These are extremely important clients, Walsh. The Blackwells are hosting. Mr. Tanaka is worth close to $1 billion, and you are going to be a ghost. Pour drinks, remove plates, and keep your eyes down. You're assigned to the far end, the Japanese gentleman and his translator. Simple service. Can you handle that?" "Yes, sir," Emma had replied, because what else could she say? Now, as she moved through the room with her water pitcher, she watched the dynamics unfold with the careful attention she had given everything since childhood. The conversation flowed around Hiroshi like water around a stone, acknowledgement of his presence but no real inclusion. When Marcus spoke about business, about markets and opportunities, he addressed the room at large, his gaze sliding past Hiroshi as if the man were simply another piece of furniture. Emma approached to refill Hiroshi's water glass. "May I?" she asked softly. He looked up and their eyes met for just a moment. His were dark brown, tired, carrying something she recognized: loneliness. "Thank you," he said, his voice gentle. "Not thanks or a dismissive nod, but actual acknowledgement of her as a person. It startled her enough that she nearly overfilled his glass. By 7:30, the first course had been served. Seared scallops with a champagne reduction that cost more than Emma's weekly groceries. The conversation had grown louder with each wine pour, Marcus holding court with stories of his business conquests. Victoria laughed at precisely the right moments, touching his arm with practiced affection. Then the mockery began, subtle at first. "The key to global business," Marcus announced, gesturing with his wine glass, "is efficiency. We don't have time for complications." His gaze flickered toward Hiroshi. "That's why we've prepared everything in advance. Clear terms, simple execution." One of the investors, a man with a florid face and loosened tie, chuckled. "Simple is good, especially when you're working across cultural barriers." The pause before cultural barriers was loaded with meaning. Thomas translated in rapid Japanese. Hiroshi responded, and Thomas rendered it back. "Mr. Tanaka appreciates clarity in business dealings." Marcus beamed. "See, we understand each other perfectly. Numbers are universal. Don't need Shakespeare when you've got spreadsheets." Laughter rippled around the table. Emma, refilling wine glasses, felt her jaw tighten. The joke wasn't funny, it was dismissive, reducing Hiroshi's intelligence to arithmetic. But Hiroshi maintained his polite smile, giving no indication he understood the insult. By 8 o'clock the main course had arrived, filet mignon with roasted vegetables plated with artistic precision. The wine had flowed generously, and with it, inhibitions had loosened. Victoria leaned toward one of the other guests and said, just loud enough to carry, "I don't know how people do business without speaking proper English. It must be so limiting." The guest, a woman in pearls, nodded sympathetically. "I took a position in Singapore once. Had to have everything translated. So inefficient." Emma was standing behind Marcus's chair, having just set down a fresh bottle of wine. She saw Hiroshi's hand tighten almost imperceptibly on his napkin. Thomas was translating something innocuous, his face reddening as he clearly edited the conversation. Marcus dove into a story about a business trip to Tokyo, complete with exaggerated pronunciation of Japanese words and a joke about confusion over chopsticks. "I finally just asked for a fork," he declared to appreciative laughter. "When in Rome, right? Or when in California, I should say." More laughter. Hiroshi smiled and nodded, seemingly pleasant and oblivious, but Emma saw it, the tiny flash of pain that crossed his features before being carefully concealed. And she saw something else. Intelligence in his eyes. Sharp, assessing intelligence that was watching everything and everyone. By 8:15, the conversation had turned to the business proposal. Marcus produced a leather folder from beside his chair with the flourish of a magician revealing his final trick. "No point in dragging this out over dessert. We're all busy people. Let's talk partnership." He opened the folder to reveal a thick stack of papers. "We've drawn up a comprehensive agreement. Your lawyers can review the fine print later, but the basics are straightforward. We combine resources, share markets, maximize profits." He slid the document toward Thomas. "If you could translate the overview for Mr. Tanaka." Thomas began reading in Japanese, his voice taking on the monotone quality of someone reading legal language. Hiroshi listened intently, occasionally asking questions that Thomas translated back. "Mr. Tanaka asks about the decision-making structure. Mr. Tanaka would like clarification on intellectual property rights." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. "All standard stuff. We've worked with the best lawyers. Everything's fair and balanced." He pulled out an expensive pen and set it on the table with a meaningful click. "We can finalize everything tonight, actually. Sign, shake hands, start the new partnership tomorrow." Emma, refilling water glasses, found herself close enough to see the contract's pages. Her ability to read upside down, developed from years of trying to read her father's disability paperwork and eviction notices, served her now. She caught phrases. Primary operational control, Blackwell Capital. Transfer of all intellectual property registered under K. Tanaka. Advisory role for... Her heart began to pound. Victoria leaned forward with a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "I'm sure a businessman of your caliber can recognize a good opportunity, Mr. Tanaka. Sometimes too much analysis just creates unnecessary complications." One of the other investors chimed in. "The early bird gets the worm, as they say. Fortune favors the bold." The pressure was building, subtle but inexorable. Emma had seen this before, not in boardrooms but in trailer parks, when loan sharks circled people who couldn't read the fine print. The friendly tone, the rushed timeline, the implication that hesitation meant stupidity. Hiroshi asked another question in Japanese. Thomas translated. "Mr. Tanaka would like to understand the clause about existing patents and innovations." Marcus's jovial expression flickered for just a moment. "Patents? Those are just... We're pooling resources, that's all. Your innovations, our infrastructure. Together, we're stronger." But Emma had seen page 27. Transfer of all intellectual property registered under K. Tanaka. Not shared or pooled. Transfer and K. Tanaka, not 8. Tanaka, not Hiroshi. She remembered his wedding ring, worn from years of wearing. A wife who was no longer here. Victoria murmured something to Marcus that Emma wasn't supposed to hear. "Another hour of this, and we'll have signatures." He has no idea what Clause 47 actually means. Marcus whispered back, "Keiko's patents will finally be ours. Should have been mine from the start anyway." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Keiko, his late wife's name. They weren't just stealing his company. They were stealing his dead wife's legacy. Emma's hands began to shake. The water pitcher in her grip felt impossibly heavy. Around her the room continued its pleasant predatory dance. Marcus laughing, Victoria smiling, investors nodding, Hiroshi sitting quiet and alone, about to sign away everything while everyone treated him like he was too simple to understand what was happening. She thought of her mother, crushed in a mind collapse because the company had ignored safety warnings. She thought of Yuki, who had seen a desperate girl and offered dignity instead of dismissal. She thought of every time she had stayed silent, stayed invisible, stayed safe. Gerald was watching her from across the room, his expression warning, "Don't." Hiroshi reached for the pen. Emma's hands steadied. In the split second before his fingers touched the metal, she made her decision. She set down the water pitcher with deliberate care, the clink of glass on marble cutting through the conversation like a bell. Heads turned. Marcus paused mid-sentence. "Is there a problem?" he asked, his tone carrying an edge. Emma walked toward Hiroshi, each step measured and sure despite the terror coursing through her veins. She could feel Gerald's glare boring into her back, could sense Victoria's confused irritation, could hear the whispers starting among the guests. She reached Hiroshi's chair and performed a deep, formal bow, the kind Yuki had taught her years ago, the kind that conveyed utmost respect. When she straightened, she looked directly into his surprised eyes, and then, in clear, careful Japanese, Emma spoke the words that would change both their lives. "Tanaka-sama, please forgive this interruption." Emma's Japanese flowed with the careful precision Yuki had drilled into her over countless evenings. "My name is Emma Walsh. I am nobody, just a server in this place. But I must speak the truth, even if it costs me everything." The room had gone completely silent. 20 pairs of eyes stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to outrage. Marcus Blackwell's face was transitioning through shades of red toward purple. Victoria's mouth had fallen open in a way that would have been comical under different circumstances. But Emma kept her eyes on Hiroshi, whose expression had shifted from surprise to something else, intense, focused attention. She continued in Japanese, her voice gaining strength. These people are not your partners. This contract is a trap designed to steal from you. They plan to take your company, your control, everything you and your late wife built together with your own hands. What the hell is she saying? Marcus demanded, half rising from his chair. Someone translate. But Emma pressed on, her words tumbling out faster now. Page 27, Clause 47B. Transfer of all intellectual property registered under K. Tanaka. They want to steal Keiko-sama's innovations. They speak of your beloved wife as if she were merely an asset to be acquired, not a person whose memory deserves honor. Hiroshi's eyes had filled with tears. His hands, which had been reaching for the pen, now gripped the edge of the table. Emma's voice broke slightly, but she forced herself to continue. I learned Japanese from a woman named Yuki Matsumoto. She was like a mother to me when I had no one. She taught me that language is a bridge between hearts, but respect is the foundation. Without respect, the bridge collapses into nothing. She bowed again, deeper this time. Tanaka-sama, she also taught me this. Silence in the face of wrong is participation in wrong. I cannot be silent. I will not watch them hurt you. Walsh! Gerald Morrison's voice cracked like a whip across the room. Outside! Now! But Hiroshi had stood, slowly and with great dignity. Tears were streaming down his face freely now. He returned Emma's bow with equal depth, and when he straightened, he spoke in Japanese, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. Thank you for seeing me as a human being. His words were formal, reverent. For 5 hours, I have sat at this table. 5 hours of insults wrapped in smiles. 5 hours of them treating me as if I were a child who could not understand simple concepts. But I understood every single word, every joke at my expense, every dismissive comment. Every moment they treated my late wife's life work as mere property to be seized. Marcus's face had gone from red to pale. Hiroshi. What is she? What are you? Hiroshi turned to face him, and when he spoke again, it was in English, clear, precise, and utterly controlled. Surprised Marcus? Yes, I speak English. Quite well, actually. I graduated from Tokyo University's International Business Program, conducted entirely in English. Top of my class. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the crackling of the fireplace seemed to have stopped. But you know something interesting? Hiroshi continued, his accented English perfectly understandable. I choose when to use English. I choose who deserves to hear my words in any language. And tonight, you showed me you deserve nothing from me. Not my language, not my trust, and certainly not my signature. Victoria found her voice first, sharp and defensive. This is completely inappropriate. This server has no right to interfere in private business. She has every right, Hiroshi cut her off, his voice quiet but commanding. She has the right of a human being witnessing injustice. She has the right of courage, which is more than I can say for anyone else in this room who sat silent while you conducted your theater of deception. He picked up the contract with both hands and held it before him like an exhibit in a trial. Marcus, 20 years ago, we were partners, best friends. We were going to build something together, with integrity, with honor, with respect for everyone involved in our business. But you wanted shortcuts. You wanted to exploit workers, cut corners on safety, manipulate contracts to benefit yourself at others' expense. Marcus tried to speak, but Hiroshi raised his hand. Please, let me finish. I said no to your methods. So did Keiko. My wife, who you never truly respected, wrote you a letter. Do you remember it, Marcus? She begged you to reconsider, to choose the ethical path, to build something you could be proud of without shame. Thomas Reed, the translator, had gone completely white. He stammered in English, "Mr. Tanaka, I didn't know you could—" "You softened their words, Thomas-san," Hiroshi said gently, switching briefly back to Japanese before returning to English. "You tried to protect my feelings. That was kind but misguided. I needed truth, not kindness." He turned back to Marcus, his expression hardening. "You cut all contact with us. You called us naive. You said we were too soft for real business. And perhaps you were right in one sense. Perhaps your ruthless way made you richer, faster. But you know what you never got, Marcus?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. Respect. Real respect. The kind that lets you sleep peacefully at night. The kind that doesn't require you to steal from widowers. The kind that means when people speak your name, they don't follow it with warnings. Marcus's voice came out hoarse. "That was business, Hiroshi. That was 20 years ago. Things are different now." "Are they?" Hiroshi opened the contract to page 27 and read aloud. "Transfer of all intellectual property registered under K. Tanaka. Not H. Tanaka, Marcus, K. Tanaka, Keiko Tanaka. My wife's name." His voice cracked on the last word, but he pressed on. "Keiko spent 15 years developing those logistics algorithms. 15 years of late nights, of breakthrough moments, of genius that you could never match. She died 5 years ago from cancer, and those patents, those innovations are all I have left to touch of her brilliance. They carry her name, her legacy, her mind that I loved so dearly." The tears were flowing freely now, but Hiroshi's voice remained steady. "You didn't just try to steal my company tonight, Marcus. You tried to steal my dead wife's legacy, the last pieces of her I can hold on to, and you did it with smiles and wine and pretended friendship." He lifted the contract high and then, with a deliberate ceremony, tore it in half. The sound of ripping paper echoed through the silent room. He tore it again and again, letting the pieces flutter to the table like snow. "This negotiation is over. You will leave my sight. And Marcus—" Hiroshi's voice dropped to barely above a whisper which somehow made it more powerful. "Don't contact me again. We have nothing more to discuss." Marcus seemed to crumble before their eyes. He sat down heavily, his face in his hands. "Hiroshi, please. I can explain. 20 years ago I was wrong. I know I was wrong, but I've changed. Have you?" Hiroshi's question cut through Marcus's pleading. "Then why this?" He gestured at the shredded contract. "Changed men don't repeat old sins in new forms. Changed men don't look at a widower and see opportunity for theft." Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "How dare you? We offered you a partnership, a chance to expand. You offered me nothing but betrayal wrapped in expensive paper." Hiroshi's gaze shifted to her, and for the first time Emma saw real anger flash in his eyes. "Mrs. Blackwell, I understand you perhaps better than you think. Your family lost everything when you were young. I know what that fear feels like. But that fear has made you cruel, and cruelty will never protect you. It will only ensure you lose the one thing you actually possess, your humanity." The words landed like blows. Victoria's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. One of the investors, an older gentleman with silver hair, stood slowly. "Marcus, I'm pulling my investment from Blackwell Capital. Not because of what happened tonight, though that's damning enough, but because you made me complicit in this attempted theft. I won't have my name associated with such practices." Another investor stood, then another. Like dominoes falling, they began gathering their coats, their expressions ranging from disgusted to uncomfortable. Within minutes, half the table had emptied. Through it all, Emma stood frozen, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone must hear it. Gerald was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Fury mixed with something else. Respect, perhaps? Or maybe just shock. Hiroshi turned to face her, and the anger drained from his features, replaced by something infinitely gentle. He spoke in Japanese again. "Emma Walsh, you risked everything for a stranger. Your job, your income, your safety. Why?" Emma's response came in Japanese, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because it was right. Because someone did the same for me once, when I had nothing and no one. Because I couldn't sit silent and watch them hurt you. Because—" her voice broke. "Because you thanked me earlier for pouring your water. You saw me. You were the only person in this room who saw me as human. How could I not do the same for you?" The tears came then, hot and unstoppable. Emma didn't even realize she was crying until Hiroshi stepped forward and gently took her hand, the one with the burn scar. "Thank you," he said in English, simple and profound. "You saved more than a business deal tonight. You saved my faith in humanity. And perhaps," his voice grew even softer, "you saved me from my own loneliness." The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of activity and emotion. Guests departed in uncomfortable clusters, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Marcus remained seated, his head in his hands, while Victoria paced near the windows with her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in furious whispers. Thomas Reed approached Hiroshi with tears on his weathered face. "Tanaka-sama," he said in Japanese, bowing deeply, "I am ashamed beyond words. I softened their insults. I protected your feelings but betrayed your trust. I should have given you the full truth no matter how ugly it was." Hiroshi placed a gentle hand on the older man's shoulder. "You were kind, Thomas-san, but Emma was brave. There is a difference. Kindness without courage becomes enabling. Remember that." Thomas nodded, still bowing. "I will. I promise you, I will." Gerald Morrison had been standing near the service door, his expression cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Finally, he approached Emma, who had remained rooted to the spot, her hands still trembling from adrenaline. "Walsh," he began, and Emma braced herself for the termination she knew was coming. But Gerald surprised her. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. "I should fire you. That's what the handbook says. No staff member interferes with guest business, under any circumstances." "I know, sir," Emma whispered. "But—" Gerald ran a hand through his thinning hair. "I've been in hospitality for 40 years. 40 years. And tonight, I watched a young woman demonstrate what true hospitality actually means. Not serving wine, not arranging flowers, serving humanity." He paused, seeming to struggle with himself. "You're not fired. You're promoted. Cultural liaison. Triple your current salary. Start Monday." Emma's legs nearly gave out. "Sir, I don't—" "That's the offer. Take the weekend to think about it." Gerald glanced at Hiroshi, then back to Emma. "And for what it's worth, Walsh, I'm sorry I told you to stay invisible. Some people deserve to be seen." He walked away before Emma could respond, leaving her standing there with tears streaming down her face for entirely different reasons now. The room had mostly cleared, except for Hiroshi, Thomas, and a woman Emma hadn't paid much attention to earlier, Marcus's assistant, Sophia Chen. She was petite, perhaps 34, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Now she approached Hiroshi with her phone in hand. "Mr. Tanaka," she said quietly, "I recorded the entire dinner, audio and video, everything Marcus and Victoria said, including the parts they thought you couldn't understand." She held out her phone. "I'm sending it to you now. Consider it evidence if you need it." Marcus's head snapped up. Sophia, what are you? You can't. I already did. Sophia didn't even look at him. My grandmother came to this country from China with nothing. She worked in laundries for 30 years, and I watched people treat her like she was invisible, stupid, worthless because her English wasn't perfect. Tonight I couldn't. Her voice caught. I couldn't watch it happen again, not when I had the power to do something. She turned to Emma and switched to Japanese, which surprised everyone. Her accent was heavily Americanized but understandable. You were very brave. My grandmother would have liked you. Before anyone could respond, Marcus stood abruptly, his chair clattering backward. His face was blotchy, his eyes red-rimmed. Fine. Fine. You want the truth? I'll give you the truth, Hiroshi. Victoria stopped her pacing. Marcus, don't... No. Marcus's voice was raw. I'm tired, Victoria. I'm so damn tired. He looked at Hiroshi with something like desperation. You're right. About all of it. 20 years ago, I made a choice. I chose profit over principles, shortcuts over integrity. And you know what? I got rich. $600 million rich, but my kids barely speak to me. My board respects my results, but not me as a person. Every article written about me uses words like ruthless and controversial. He laughed bitterly. And you? You're a legend. The CEO with a conscience. Everyone respects you. Everyone wants to work with you. I thought... His voice broke. I thought if I could just beat you once, prove my way was better, then maybe I could finally stop feeling like I made the wrong choice all those years ago. Tears were running down his face now. But you're right. I didn't win anything. I just became this... someone who would steal from a widower, someone who would dishonor a dead woman's legacy for a profit margin. He sank back into his chair. Keiko's letter. I kept it. 20 years. And I kept it in my desk drawer. She wrote, Marcus, success built on others' pain will never bring you peace. She was right. God, she was so right. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of confession. Victoria was staring at her husband with an expression Emma couldn't quite read. Disgust, perhaps, or maybe recognition of something in herself. Hiroshi regarded Marcus for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. Marcus, you betrayed me 20 years ago. Tonight you tried again. I have evidence now, witnesses, recordings. I could destroy you completely. Your reputation, your company, everything. Marcus nodded, not even trying to defend himself. I know. But Hiroshi paused, and Emma saw something flicker across his face. Pain, memory, compassion struggling against justified anger. My wife, Keiko, said something to me before she died. In her final weeks, when the cancer had taken almost everything but her spirit, she said, Hiro, the world has enough broken people adding to the brokenness. Be a healer, not another wound. He took a breath. I don't want to destroy you, Marcus, but I cannot trust you. Not now. Perhaps not ever. So here is what will happen. He counted on his fingers as he spoke. First, public acknowledgement of what you attempted tonight. A statement in your own words taking full responsibility. Second, immediate independent ethics review of Blackwell Capital. Transparent. Thorough. Third, restitution. $10 million to a charity in Keiko's name focused on children's education. Marcus was nodding, tears still flowing. Yes, all of it. Whatever you... I'm not finished. Hiroshi's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Fourth, therapy. Professional help. Both of you. He glanced at Victoria. I will pay for it if needed. Fifth, no contact with me for a minimum of 1 year. After that, if you have genuinely changed, if you have done the work to become better people, We can talk. Maybe I make no promises. He leaned forward slightly. But understand this, Marcus. I remember who you used to be. The Marcus who dreamed of changing the world for the better, not conquering it for profit. The young man who wanted to build something meaningful. Maybe that person is still in there somewhere. This is your chance to find him again. Don't waste it. Marcus covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. Why? Why show me mercy after everything? Because Keiko would have. Because she believed people could change if they chose to do the hard work. And because... Hiroshi's voice softened. Because I still remember our friendship, before ambition poisoned it. That memory deserves at least a chance at redemption. Victoria finally spoke, her voice small and unlike the confident tone from earlier. She stopped, started again. My family lost everything when I was 15. Bankruptcy, foreclosure, my father's suicide. I swore I would never be powerless again, never be poor again. But I think, her voice cracked, I think I confused power with cruelty, security with control. She looked at Emma with something like wonder. You have nothing. No safety net, no wealth, no protection, and yet you were willing to risk it all for a principle, for a stranger. I don't think I could have done that. You could have, Emma said quietly. It was the first time she'd spoken since the confrontation began. You chose not to. That's different from couldn't. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. Victoria nodded slowly, tears beginning to form in her own eyes. You're right. I chose not to. I chose wrong. She looked at Hiroshi. I accept your terms. All of them. And I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Hiroshi inclined his head in acknowledgement but said nothing more to her. Instead, he turned to Emma, who was still standing near his chair, feeling simultaneously exhausted and electrified. Emma Walsh, he said, switching back to Japanese. May I speak with you privately? Emma's heart leaped. Yes, of course, Tanaka-sama. Please, he said gently, still in Japanese. Call me Hiroshi. After tonight, I think we have moved beyond formality. They walked out onto the veranda together, leaving the wreckage of the dinner behind. The October air was cool and clear, carrying the scent of ripening grapes from the surrounding vineyards. The moon was rising over the hills, painting everything in silver and shadow. The sounds of the room behind them faded, replaced by crickets and the whisper of wind through the vines. For a moment, neither spoke. They stood side by side at the railing, looking out over the dark rows of grapes stretching toward the horizon. Emma was acutely aware of Hiroshi's presence beside her, not threatening or demanding, just quietly there. Finally, Hiroshi broke the silence, speaking in Japanese. Where did you learn our language? You speak with such heart. Not just words, but feeling. Emma took a shaky breath. When I was 18 years old, I ran away from home. My mother had died 6 years before, a coal mining accident in West Virginia. The mine had safety violations, but nobody cared because we were poor, disposable. The bitterness crept into her voice despite her efforts. My father couldn't cope with losing her. He turned to alcohol and then to anger. I had to leave or... She stopped, not wanting to finish that sentence. I understand, Hiroshi said softly, and something in his tone told Emma that he really did. I ended up in Los Angeles with $43 in a duffel bag. No plan, no connections, just survival instinct. I was so hungry. Emma's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Not just for food, though that too. Hungry for purpose, for dignity, for someone to see me as human. She smiled through the tears that were forming again. A woman named Yuki Matsumoto owned a tiny Japanese restaurant in Little Tokyo. I must have looked desperate because I was I begged her for any work, dishwashing, cleaning, anything. She looked at me for a long time, and then she said, "You start now, but not dishes. You start learning." "She sounds like Keiko," Hiroshi murmured. "My wife, the same spirit of seeing potential where others see only problems." For 3 years, Yuki-san was my mother, my teacher, my friend. Everything I lost, she helped me find again in different forms. She taught me Japanese, yes, but more than that. She taught me about respect, about dignity, about how to bow properly and when, about the concept of omotenashi, hospitality from the heart. Emma turned to face Hiroshi. She would say, "Emma-chan, language is a bridge between hearts, but respect is the foundation. Without respect, the bridge collapses and both sides fall into darkness." "Wise woman," Hiroshi said. "She died 8 years ago. Cancer. Just like—" Emma caught herself. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to—" "No, please." Hiroshi touched her arm gently. "Keiko died 5 years ago from the same disease. I understand that particular grief." They stood in shared silence for a moment, united by loss. "Did you get to say goodbye?" Hiroshi asked. "I held her hand in the hospital. She could barely speak by the end, but she made me promise something. She said, 'Emma-chan, you have a kind heart. Don't let this cruel world make you hard. Promise me you'll stay soft, stay open, stay brave.'" I promised her. Emma's voice broke. "Tonight, when I saw them hurting you, treating you like you were less than human because of language, because of culture, I heard Yuki-san's voice so clearly. 'Emma-chan, what are you waiting for? Silence in the face of wrong is participation in wrong.'" Hiroshi was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the moonlit vineyards. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Emma, look at me, please." She did. His eyes were wet with tears that reflected the moonlight. "You are the bravest person I have met in 30 years of international business. You risked everything, your job, your security, your safety, for a complete stranger. For what? For a principle. For kindness. For justice." He paused. "Do you understand how rare that is? How precious?" Emma shook her head, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'm nobody, Hiroshi-san. I'm just a server who barely graduated high school. I live in a studio apartment that costs most of my paycheck. I eat ramen 3 meals a day. I'm nobody special." "Stop!" Hiroshi's voice was firm but gentle. He reached out and took both her hands in his, the gesture startling in its intimacy and comfort. "You are not nobody. Those circumstances, poverty, limited education, they don't define your worth. They define only what opportunities you've been denied, not what value you possess." He squeezed her hands gently. "You speak Japanese better than executives I've hired with university degrees. You understand concepts of honor and respect that people with Harvard MBAs never grasp. You have moral courage that billionaires lack. Emma, you have something no degree can teach and no money can buy. You have integrity." Emma couldn't speak. No one had ever said anything like this to her. Not her teachers, not her father, not anyone except Yuki. The words settled into her chest like warm stones, heavy and grounding. "I want to offer you something," Hiroshi continued. "But first, I need you to understand that this comes with no obligation, no pressure. If you say no, I will respect that completely. Do you understand?" Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. "I'm offering you a position with my company. Director of Cross-Cultural Relations. You would be based here in California initially, with travel to Japan several times a year. Your job would be to ensure that all our international partnerships are built on mutual respect and understanding. To make sure what happened tonight never happens in any business dealing we conduct." He paused, watching her face carefully. The salary would be $150,000 annually. Full benefits, including health insurance, housing stipend, and education fund if you wish to pursue any formal studies. Equity options in the company after 1 year. Emma's knees actually buckled. Hiroshi steadied her, his grip strong despite his slight frame. That's more than I can't. You can, Hiroshi said firmly. You absolutely can. Emma, you have something my company desperately needs, not just language skills, though those are valuable. You have the perspective of someone who has been invisible, who has been dismissed, who has been treated as less than human. That perspective is invaluable in teaching others how not to behave. Emma was shaking her head, overwhelmed. But I have no experience, no credentials, no... You saved my company tonight from a hostile takeover. You exposed fraud with nothing but courage and a water pitcher. That's more experience than most consultants achieve in entire careers. Hiroshi's voice softened. But more than the job, Emma, I need to tell you something personal. He released one of her hands but kept holding the other, as if anchoring both of them. For 5 years since Keiko died, I've been alone. Not just physically, though, yes, I live in a house meant for a family, but lonely in my soul. I go through the motions, work, eat, sleep, work again. I thought I was fine. I told myself grief gets easier with time. His voice cracked. But tonight, when you spoke to me in Japanese, when you saw me not as a CEO or a potential business partner, but as a human being in pain, something in me woke up after 5 years of sleep. For the first time since Keiko's death, I felt truly seen. Not my money, not my success, not my reputation. Me, the person underneath all those labels. Emma's throat was tight. I saw you because I recognized myself. The loneliness, the isolation, the feeling of being in a room full of people and being completely alone. Yes, Hiroshi whispered. Exactly, yes. We recognized each other, didn't we? Two lonely people in a crowded room. They stood in silence, the weight of that recognition hanging between them. The moon had risen higher, casting everything in stark relief. From inside, they could hear the sounds of the dinner's final dissolution. Chairs scraping, voices calling for cars, the busy work of ending something that should never have begun. I'm 58 years old, Hiroshi said quietly. You're 29. I'm a Japanese widower, you're an American woman. I'm wealthy, you're, forgive me, currently struggling financially. The world would look at us and see nothing but differences. Emma's heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Why are you telling me this? Because, despite all those differences, or perhaps because of them, I want to know you, really know you, not as an employee, though I truly hope you'll accept that position, but as a person, as a friend. He paused, seeming to search for words. Would that be acceptable to you? The question was so formal, so careful, so respectful that Emma felt something crack open in her chest. Here was a man worth nearly $1 billion, a titan of industry, asking her permission to be her friend, not assuming, not demanding, not taking for granted that she would be honored by his attention. Just asking. I would like that very much, Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. I would like that more than anything. Hiroshi's smile was like sunrise, slow, warm, transforming. Then, perhaps we could start with dinner. A real dinner, not a business meeting, just two people who would like to know each other better. I'd like that too. They stood there for another moment, hands still joined, looking at each other in the moonlight. Something was beginning between them, fragile and tentative as a seedling pushing through concrete. Neither of them named it. Neither of them dared to, not yet, but both felt it, the possibility of connection, of understanding, of something that might ease the loneliness they both carried. "I should probably go back inside," Emma said reluctantly. "Help with cleanup, even if I am apparently promoted now." Hiroshi smiled. "Ever dutiful. But Emma, remember, you don't have to serve anyone anymore unless you choose to. You've earned the right to choose." They walked back into the dining room together. The space had mostly cleared. Marcus and Victoria were gone, along with all the investors. Thomas was packing up his translation equipment, moving with the careful precision of someone trying to process shock. Sophia Chen was wiping down tables, even though she was an assistant, not cleaning staff. Gerald approached them immediately. "Mr. Tanaka, I want to apologize on behalf of Silverstone Estate. What happened here tonight, the way you were treated, it's inexcusable." "You didn't treat me poorly," Hiroshi said mildly. "Your staff member saved me. I'd say that reflects very well on your establishment's values, even if those values came from an unexpected source." Gerald glanced at Emma with an expression of profound respect. "Walsh, Emma, you start your new position Monday. HR will have paperwork ready. Take the weekend to rest. I think you've earned it." "Thank you, sir," Emma said softly. As Gerald walked away, Sophia approached them. She looked exhausted, her earlier professional composure cracked like old paint. "Mr. Tanaka, I want to apologize for my part in this. I should have spoken up sooner. I knew what Marcus was planning. I typed up that contract. I saw the clauses." "But you recorded everything," Hiroshi pointed out. "And you gave me that evidence. Why?" Sophia was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother, like I said, was an immigrant. Chinese. She came here in the 1960s when things were, well, they weren't easy. She worked in laundries, restaurants, taking any job she could get. I watched people treat her like she was stupid, like she was invisible, my whole childhood. She was brilliant. She spoke 4 dialects and could do math in her head that computers struggled with. But because her English was accented, people dismissed her." Tears were forming in her eyes. "She died 5 years ago, and I still regret that I never stood up for her the way I should have. I was ashamed when I was young, ashamed of her accent, her old-fashioned clothes, the way she didn't fit in. Tonight, watching Marcus and Victoria do to you what people did to my grandmother, I couldn't be silent again. I couldn't let shame win twice." Hiroshi bowed deeply to her. "Your grandmother would be very proud of you. And thank you, Sophia-san, for your courage." Sophia bowed back, tears flowing freely now. "Thank you for saying that. You don't know how much I needed to hear it." The three of them helped with the final cleanup, Hiroshi insisting, despite protests, that a CEO shouldn't be clearing plates. "Keiko and I started our business in a garage," he said simply. "I've never forgotten how to wash dishes." By 11 o'clock, the Founders' Hall was restored to its original pristine condition, all evidence of the disastrous dinner erased except for the memories carried by those who'd witnessed it. Thomas had departed with multiple apologies and a promise to recommend better translators. Ones with more backbone, he'd said ruefully. Sophia had left with Hiroshi's business card and an invitation to interview for a position at Tanaka Industries. Finally, it was just Emma and Hiroshi standing in the parking lot under the stars. The October night had grown cold, and Emma shivered in her thin server's uniform. Without a word, Hiroshi shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. It was still warm from his body heat and smelled faintly of sandalwood and something else, something uniquely him. "Thank you," Emma said, pulling the jacket closer. "For everything. For being kind. For seeing me. For—" her voice caught. "For giving me hope that good things can happen, even to people like me." "People like you," Hiroshi repeated softly. "Emma, you are the good thing that happened tonight. To me, to the situation, To everyone who witnessed your courage, please don't diminish that." He pulled a business card from his pocket, elegant, cream-colored stock, with simple black lettering in both English and Japanese. "My personal cell phone number is on the back, not my assistant's number, not my office line. Mine. Please call me this weekend. We'll arrange that dinner. And Emma—" He paused, seeming to struggle with something. "If you need anything at all before Monday, please reach out. I mean that sincerely." Emma took the card with trembling fingers. I will, I promise." They stood there for another moment, neither quite ready to end the evening despite its traumatic nature. Or perhaps because of it. Sometimes trauma creates bonds that ordinary circumstances never could. "Good night, Emma Walsh," Hiroshi said finally in Japanese. "Sleep well, and know that you changed a life tonight. Mine." "Good night, Hiroshi Tanaka," Emma replied in the same language. "Thank you for letting me be brave." She watched him walk to his car, a modest sedan, she noticed, not the limousine she might have expected. He drove away with a final wave, his taillights disappearing down the long driveway lined with ancient oaks. Emma stood alone in the parking lot, wearing a jacket that cost more than her monthly rent, holding a business card that represented a future she'd never dared imagine, feeling the weight of possibility settle onto her shoulders like wings. She pulled out her phone and looked at the time, 11:17 p.m. The date, October 15th, 2024. She wanted to remember this moment, this exact configuration of time and space where her life had pivoted from one trajectory to another entirely. On impulse, she took a photo of the business card, then another of the now dark Founders Hall. Then she opened her photos and found the picture of Yuki that she kept on her phone, taken on Emma's 21st birthday. Yuki was smiling, her weathered face full of warmth and pride. "I did it, Yuki-san," Emma whispered to the photo. "I was brave like you taught me. I spoke up. I didn't stay silent." Tears were flowing again, but these were different. Not grief or fear, but release and gratitude. "I hope you're proud of me. I hope Mama's proud too. I finally did something that matters." The photo, of course, didn't respond. But in Emma's heart she felt certain. Yuki would have been proud. Her mother would have been proud. And for the first time in her 29 years, Emma was proud of herself. She walked to her car, a 15-year-old Honda with a cracked windshield and a temperamental engine, and drove home through the dark California night, wearing a jacket that smelled like sandalwood and hope, carrying a business card that promised tomorrow might be different from yesterday. The video appeared online at 6:43 the following morning. Emma was still asleep, exhausted from the emotional whirlwind of the previous evening, when her phone began buzzing with notifications. By the time she stumbled out of bed and checked, there were already 200 missed calls, 300 texts, and her social media accounts were exploding with activity. Sophia Chen had uploaded the entire dinner recording to multiple platforms simultaneously. The video was titled simply, "Corporate Fraud Exposed: How They Tried to Steal from a Widower." Within 2 hours, it had 10 million views. Within 6 hours, it was trending worldwide. Emma sat on her worn couch, watching her phone light up with message after message, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the device. The video showed everything: Marcus and Victoria's dismissive comments, their cruel jokes, Thomas's nervous translations, Hiroshi's quiet dignity in the face of disrespect, and then Emma's intervention. The audio was crystal clear, capturing every word in both English and Japanese, with Sophia having added subtitles in multiple languages. But it wasn't just the dinner footage going viral. Within hours, the story had been picked up by major news outlets, and the narrative began to fracture into competing versions. Some headlines were supportive. Brave server exposes corporate fraud. Others were vicious. Poor waitress seduces Japanese millionaire for fortune. The tabloids were worst of all. From rags to riches, the Cinderella scheme. By noon, there were reporters outside Emma's apartment building. She watched from her window as news vans parked on the street, cameras pointed at her front door. Her phone rang again, another unknown number. She'd stopped answering hours ago, but the voicemails kept piling up. Journalists requesting interviews, producers offering reality show deals, and worst of all, people from her past crawling out of the woodwork. An ex-boyfriend she hadn't spoken to in 5 years had given an interview to a tabloid. Emma always talked about finding an easy way out. She was obsessed with rich people, always watching those lifestyle shows. I'm not surprised she finally found her meal ticket. The words were lies, vicious and calculated, but they spread like wildfire across social media. Gold Digger began trending alongside #Justice for Emma. The internet had split into warring factions, some defending her courage, others questioning her motives. Emma's father called for the first time in 3 years. She almost didn't answer, but some masochistic impulse made her pick up. "Emma? Baby girl, it's Daddy." His voice was slurred, drunk at noon on a Saturday. "Saw you on the TV. Dating some rich Asian fella. Fancy that. My little girl, all grown up and smart." He laughed, the sound ugly and familiar. "Think maybe he could spare some cash? Your old man's having a rough time. Disability ain't stretching like it used to." Emma's stomach turned. "Goodbye, Daddy." "Now wait just a—" She hung up before he could finish, then sat staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. Of course, her father's first contact in years would be to ask for money, not to say he was proud, not to ask if she was okay, just to see what he could extract from her newfound connection to wealth. By evening, Emma was huddled in her apartment with the curtains drawn, watching her life implode across multiple screens. The supportive comments were heartening. Stories from other women who'd experienced similar discrimination, people praising her courage, immigrant communities expressing gratitude. But the hateful messages were overwhelming in their volume and creativity. Anonymous accounts called her a whore, a gold digger, a manipulator. They analyzed her appearance in the video, picking apart her worn uniform, her unfashionable hairstyle, her calculating expression. They questioned why she knew Japanese. Was she a plant? Had she planned this? Several conspiracy theories emerged suggesting the entire dinner was staged. Her phone rang again, and this time she recognized the number. Hiroshi. She answered with a sob caught in her throat. "Emma? Are you all right? I've been trying to reach you all day." His voice was warm with concern, a lifeline in the storm. "I'm so sorry," Emma choked out. "I've destroyed your reputation. They're calling me a gold digger, saying I manipulated you, that I planned everything. Hiroshi, I swear I didn't—" "Stop. Emma, breathe." His voice was firm but gentle. "I know you didn't plan anything. I was there, remember? I know the truth. But the media, the things they're saying about both of us, let them say whatever they want. Emma, I'm coming over. Give me your address." "No!" Emma's response was immediate and panicked. "There are reporters everywhere. If you come here, it'll make everything worse. They'll have photos of you at my apartment, and then the stories will—" "I don't care about the stories." "But I do." Emma was crying openly now. "I care because your company has a reputation to protect. Your board of directors, your investors. They're going to see you with me and think exactly what the tabloids are saying. That I'm some poor nobody who trapped you, who used that dinner to position myself." "Emma, you're spiraling. Please let me help." "The best way to help is to stay away from me." The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but Emma forced them out. Let the story die. In a few weeks, people will forget, and you can go back to your life without this mess following you. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Hiroshi spoke again, his voice was quiet but carried an edge of steel. Is that what you really want? For me to abandon you to face this alone? It's what's best for you. I'm not asking what's best for me. I'm asking what you want, Emma. Emma closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. What she wanted was impossible. She wanted the world to stop judging, stop analyzing, stop turning her act of courage into a scandal. She wanted to go back to being invisible before everything became so complicated. But most of all, she wanted to not be alone. Her voice broke. I want this to not be happening. I know, Emma, but it is happening, and we face it together or not at all. I won't leave you alone in this. I can't. The conversation was interrupted by pounding on Emma's door. Miss Walsh? This is Rebecca Morrison from Channel 7 News. We'd love to get your side of the story. Emma pulled her knees to her chest, making herself as small as possible. I have to go. Please, Hiroshi, just give me some time to think. She hung up before he could respond, then turned off her phone completely. The pounding continued for another 10 minutes before finally stopping. Emma sat in the gathering darkness of her apartment, surrounded by the detritus of her life. Instant ramen cups, second-hand furniture, a photograph of a woman who had loved her unconditionally. The contrast between this room and the world Hiroshi inhabited felt like a chasm she could never cross. By Sunday morning, the story had evolved in unexpected ways. Marcus Blackwell had issued a statement, but not the defensive denial Emma had expected. Instead, at a hastily arranged press conference, he stood before cameras, looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight, and told the truth. Emma watched the live stream on her laptop, her heart pounding. Marcus's face was blotchy, his eyes red-rimmed, his usual bombastic confidence completely absent. My name is Marcus Blackwell, he began, his voice hoarse. 2 nights ago, I attempted to defraud Hiroshi Tanaka, CEO of Tanaka Industries, out of his company and his late wife's intellectual property. I used cultural mockery, language barriers, and deliberate deception to try to steal everything he had built. I'm here to take full accountability for my actions. No spin, no excuses, no blame shifting. The reporters erupted with questions, but Marcus held up his hand. I need to address something else. The media has vilified Emma Walsh over the past 48 hours. You've called her a gold digger, a manipulator, a social climber. It's disgusting. And it's wrong. He pulled out a manila folder. I've had my team pull security footage, staff schedules, and financial records. Emma Walsh had no idea who Hiroshi Tanaka was before that dinner. She was assigned to that room randomly on rotation with other servers. She didn't seek him out. She didn't plan anything. Marcus's voice strengthened with conviction. What Emma did was simple. She saw a human being treated with cruelty and disrespect, and she risked her livelihood to defend him. That's not manipulation. That's heroism. Emma Walsh is not a gold digger. She's a woman who regularly sends $200 of her minimum wage paycheck to her alcoholic father who abused her. She's someone who gives her tips to homeless people. She's someone who volunteers at a soup kitchen on her days off. He looked directly into the camera. The world owes Emma Walsh an apology. I owe her an apology. She showed me what real character looks like, and it shamed me into finally confronting my own moral bankruptcy. The press conference continued with Marcus detailing his plans for restitution, therapy, and business reform, but Emma had stopped listening. Her hands were shaking as she read the comments flooding in on the live stream. The tide was beginning to turn. Within hours of Marcus's press conference, the narrative began to shift dramatically. Support for Emma poured in from unexpected corners of the internet and beyond. Women shared their own stories of being judged for their economic status, their appearance, their perceived ambitions. Immigrant communities rallied around the story of someone defending cultural dignity. The #WeAreEmma began trending, overtaking the hateful #GoldDigger tag. Former co-workers from Emma's various jobs came forward with testimonials. A manager from the soup kitchen where she volunteered spoke to reporters. Emma works here every Sunday morning, has for 3 years. She serves meals, cleans tables, and talks to everyone with such kindness. One winter, she gave her own coat to a homeless woman and walked home in the cold. Teachers from her high school in West Virginia were tracked down. Mrs. Patricia Henderson, who had taught Emma English in 10th grade, gave a tearful interview. Emma was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. She had to leave school to help support her family after her mother died. It broke my heart. She would have gone so far with the right opportunities. Even people Emma barely remembered reached out. The owner of the Little Tokyo restaurant where Yuki had worked, now run by Yuki's daughter Hanako, posted a long tribute on social media with photos of young Emma learning to make miso soup, practicing Japanese characters, smiling shyly at the camera. Emma was family to my mother, Hanako wrote. She would give her last dollar to help someone in need. She is the kindest person I know. What she did for Mr. Tanaka is exactly who she has always been, brave and good. Victoria Blackwell surprised everyone by issuing her own statement on Sunday evening. It was brief but devastating in its honesty. I was wrong about Emma Walsh. I let my own fears and bitterness make me cruel. Emma showed me what real strength looks like. The courage to do right when doing right costs you everything. I'm deeply sorry for my part in this, and I'm seeking help to become a better person. By Monday morning, major media outlets were running correction pieces. "We were wrong about Emma Walsh" appeared in the Washington Post. The New York Times published an op-ed titled "The Cinderella Story We Almost Destroyed." Think pieces emerged about class prejudice, about how society treats poor women who dare to exist in wealthy spaces, about the automatic suspicion placed on anyone who rises above their station. But Emma, alone in her apartment with her phone still turned off, knew none of this. She had spent the weekend in a kind of suspended animation, unable to eat, unable to sleep properly, caught between the desire to disappear entirely and the small, stubborn hope that Hiroshi had meant what he said about not abandoning her. On Monday morning, there was a knock on her door. Emma approached cautiously, expecting more reporters. Instead, she found Gerald Morrison standing in the hallway with a large manila envelope and an expression of profound awkwardness. "Walsh, Emma," he corrected himself. "May I come in? I promise I'm not here to cause problems." Emma let him in, acutely aware of how shabby her apartment must look to someone who managed a luxury estate. But Gerald didn't seem to notice or care about the worn furniture and peeling paint. "First things first," he said, handing her the envelope. "Your new contract. Director of Cultural Relations, as promised. The salary is actually higher than I quoted," Mr. Tanaka insisted. $175,000 annually, plus benefits, housing stipend, and equity options. Emma stared at the papers as if they were written in an alien language. "Gerald, with everything that's happened proves we need you more than ever." The video has been viewed by over 50 million people now. Emma, you've become a symbol. Companies are already reaching out asking about cultural sensitivity training, wanting to avoid being the next viral disaster. He smiled slightly. "You're not just qualified for this job, you might be the only person qualified for it." Emma sank into her second-hand couch. "I haven't been online since Saturday night." It was too horrible. "You should look now," Gerald said gently. Things have changed significantly. Marcus Blackwell's confession, Victoria's apology, all the people coming forward to vouch for you, public opinion has shifted. You're not the villain in this story, Emma. You never were, but now most people finally understand that. After Gerald left, Emma sat with her laptop, hands trembling as she reconnected to the internet. The flood of messages that came through was overwhelming, but the tone had changed entirely. Her inbox was full of job offers, interview requests, speaking invitations. But more than that, there were thousands of messages from ordinary people thanking her, sharing their own stories, telling her she'd given them courage. One message in particular made Emma's eyes fill with tears. It was from a young woman in Seattle. "I'm a Korean-American immigrant working as a paralegal. Last week my boss made jokes about my accent in front of clients. I stayed quiet because I need this job. But after watching your video, I reported him to HR. They're investigating now. Thank you for showing me that speaking up is possible. You changed my life." There were hundreds of messages like this, people who had found their own courage in Emma's example. The weight of it was overwhelming. She had never wanted to be a symbol or a spokesperson. She had just wanted to do the right thing in a single moment. But apparently, that single moment had rippled outward in ways she never imagined. Among the messages was one from Hiroshi, sent late Sunday night. "Emma, I know you need space and I'm respecting that. But please know, I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready, I'm here. Everything I said on the veranda is still true. More true now than before. You don't have to face this alone unless you choose to. H." Emma read the message 3 times, then picked up her phone with shaking hands. She turned it on for the first time in 2 days, watching as it buzzed frantically with missed calls and voicemails. Most were from reporters, but several were from Hiroshi. She listened to the most recent one, left early that morning. "Emma, it's Monday morning. I'm hoping you're feeling better. I wanted you to know, my board of directors met yesterday. They wanted me to distance myself from the situation from you. I told them that if they couldn't accept my friendship with you, they could accept my resignation. I built this company and they need me more than I need them." His voice was warm, determined. "But more importantly, I don't want to lead a company that would ask me to abandon someone who showed me such courage. Please call me when you can. I miss talking to you." Emma sat staring at her phone for a long moment. He had defied his board of directors for her. He had stood up to the most powerful people in his professional life, rather than distance himself from a woman he'd known for barely 3 days. The magnitude of that gesture hit her like a wave. She dialed his number before she could lose her nerve. He answered on the first ring, his voice breathless. "Emma, are you all right?" "I'm sorry," Emma said, and then she was crying. Not the desperate, frightened tears of the weekend, but something deeper and more cathartic. "I'm sorry I shut you out. I was so scared and I thought pushing you away would protect you, but that wasn't my choice to make. Emma, breathe. It's okay." "You're okay." Hiroshi's voice was infinitely gentle. "You've been through trauma. Your response was completely understandable. Have you been online? Have you seen what people are saying now?" "Some of it. Marcus's confession changed many minds." Hiroshi paused. "But Emma, I need you to understand something. Even if public opinion hadn't shifted, even if they were still calling you terrible names, it wouldn't change anything for me. I know who you are. I was there that night. I saw your courage, your integrity, your heart. The court of public opinion doesn't get to define you." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You stood up to your board for me." "Of course I did. Emma, these past few days have clarified something for me. When Keiko died, I thought the meaningful part of my life was over. I thought I would just exist until I didn't anymore, filling my days with work to avoid the emptiness. But you reminded me what it feels like to care about something beyond quarterly earnings. He took a breath, and Emma could hear the emotion in it. You reminded me what it feels like to want to wake up in the morning, to want to talk to someone, to share ideas, to learn about another person's life. I'm not going to let fear or public opinion or corporate politics take that away from me. Not again. Emma's heart was hammering. Hiroshi, I need to tell you something. That night on the veranda, when you offered me friendship, I wanted to say yes to more than friendship, but I was too scared. Scared of the age difference, the cultural differences, the money, all of it. I'm still scared. So am I, Hiroshi said quietly. Terrified, actually. I haven't felt this way since I was young. But Emma, I learned something when Keiko got sick. I learned that fear is not a good reason to say no to happiness. Fear is guaranteed. We're always afraid of losing what matters. But love is a gift we might only get once or twice in a lifetime, maybe not at all. The word love hung in the air between them. Neither had said it before. It was too soon, too fast, too much. And yet, it felt inevitable, like water finding its level. I want to see you, Emma whispered. I want to have that dinner you promised. I want to know everything about you, about Keiko, about your childhood, about what makes you laugh. I want to tell you about Yuki, about my mother, about growing up in Appalachia. I want to stop being scared. Then let's start, Hiroshi said, and Emma could hear the smile in his voice. Tonight, I'll pick you up at 7. There's a small Japanese restaurant I know. Quiet, private, run by a family from Osaka. No photographers, no business, just us. Is that acceptable? That sounds perfect. After they hung up, Emma sat in her apartment, really looking at it for the first time in days. The shabby furniture, the peeling paint, the evidence of years of barely scraping by, it all looked different now. Not shameful, but honest. This apartment represented survival, resilience, the determination to keep going when everything said to give up. She thought about Yuki, who had come to America with nothing and built a life through sheer determination and kindness. She thought about her mother, who had gone into that mine every day to provide for her family despite knowing the dangers. She thought about all the women in her family line who had survived poverty, abuse, loss, and kept moving forward. I'm not going to be ashamed anymore, Emma said aloud to the empty room, to Yuki's photograph, to her mother's memory. I did nothing wrong. I was brave, and I deserve good things. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a photo that made her gasp. It was from Hanako, Yuki's daughter. The image showed a small altar in the restaurant, and in the center was Yuki's photograph surrounded by flowers. But there was something new, a printed screenshot from the viral video showing Emma bowing to Hiroshi, speaking in Japanese. The text read, "Oka-san is so proud of you, Emma-chan. We all are. You honored everything she taught you. You were brave like she was brave. Come visit us soon. We miss you. And bring Mr. Tanaka. I want to cook for both of you. Love, Hanako." Emma cried again, but these were tears of release, of gratitude, of something that felt almost like joy. She had spent so much of her life feeling alone, feeling like she had to fight every battle by herself. But she wasn't alone. She had never been alone. Yuki's love lived on through Hanako, through the lessons Emma carried, through the courage she had found when it mattered most. And now she had Hiroshi, whatever that meant, whatever it would become. She had someone who saw her, really saw her, and chose to stay. The rest of Monday passed in a blur of activity. Emma showered for the first time in 2 days, washed her hair, put on the nicest dress she owned, a simple navy blue number she'd bought at a thrift store for a job interview years ago. She stood in front of her bathroom mirror, looking at herself with new eyes. She wasn't beautiful by magazine standards. Her face was too thin. Her hands showed the wear of years of service work. She had dark circles under her eyes from stress and sleepless nights. But she was real. She was honest. She was kind. And somehow, impossibly, that was enough. At precisely 7 o'clock, there was a knock on her door. Emma opened it to find Hiroshi standing there in casual clothes, khakis and a simple button-down shirt, holding a bouquet of daisies. Not roses, not expensive exotic flowers, but simple white daisies that probably cost $10 at the grocery store. "You remembered," Emma whispered, staring at the flowers. She'd mentioned once, briefly on the veranda, that daisies were her favorite because her mother used to pick them wild on the mountainside. "I remember everything you've told me," Hiroshi said. "May I come in?" Emma stepped aside, suddenly self-conscious about her shabby apartment. But Hiroshi looked around with genuine interest, not judgment. His gaze lingered on Yuki's photograph, on the few books Emma owned, on the careful way she'd tried to make the space homely despite its limitations. "This is nice," he said simply. "It feels like you." "It's falling apart," Emma corrected with a self-deprecating laugh. "No," Hiroshi said firmly. "It's honest. There's no pretense here, no showing off, just a person living their life with dignity despite circumstances that make dignity difficult." "That's admirable, Emma, not shameful." The restaurant Hiroshi chose was exactly as he had described, small, quiet, tucked into a side street in a neighborhood Emma had never visited. It was called Sakura House, and when they entered, an elderly Japanese couple greeted Hiroshi with warm familiarity. They spoke rapidly in Japanese, and Emma caught fragments about how happy they were to see him, how long it had been, how they'd heard about what happened. The couple, Mr. and Mrs. Yamamoto, bowed deeply to Emma when Hiroshi introduced her. "This is Emma Walsh," he said in Japanese, his voice full of warmth. "She's the woman I told you about, the one who spoke for me when I had no voice." "Mrs." Yamamoto's eyes filled with tears. She took Emma's hands in her weathered ones and spoke in heavily accented English. "Thank you. Thank you for honor my people, for seeing my friend with respect." They were seated in a private corner, away from the few other diners. The table was simple wood, worn smooth by years of use, Mrs. Yamamoto brought them tea personally, pouring with the ceremonial care that made even this simple gesture feel sacred. For a moment after she left, Emma and Hiroshi simply sat in comfortable silence, sipping their tea. The intimacy of the moment felt enormous. No cameras, no crowds, no expectations. Just two people learning how to be themselves with each other. "Tell me about Keiko," Emma said softly. "If that's okay, I want to know about her." Hiroshi's expression shifted, pain and love mixing in equal measure. "Are you sure? It's not uncomfortable for you?" "I'm sure. She was important to you. She shaped who you are. How could I know you without knowing about her?" Hiroshi set down his teacup with careful precision. "Keiko and I met when we were very young. I was 22, she was 20. We were both working at the same electronics company in Tokyo, entry-level positions. I was in logistics, she was in engineering. We met in the cafeteria because we both brought homemade lunches. Everyone else bought from the company cafeteria, but we couldn't afford it." He smiled at the memory. "She noticed I was reading an American business magazine during lunch, practicing my English. She asked if I could help her with her English pronunciation in exchange for help with technical concepts I struggled with. We studied together every day for 6 months before I finally got the courage to ask her on a real date. Emma watched his face transform as he spoke, the years falling away to reveal the young man he'd been. We were married 2 years later in a tiny ceremony, just immediate family. We couldn't afford a reception, so Keiko's mother made onigiri, and we had a picnic in the park. Best wedding I could have imagined. His voice grew thick. We started Tanaka Industries in our garage. Keiko did all the engineering. I handled business development. We ate instant ramen for 2 years straight. She cut her own hair to save money. We slept on a futon on the floor because we couldn't afford a bed. But you were happy, Emma said. It wasn't a question. So happy. Because we were building something together. Because we had each other. The poverty didn't matter. We were rich in the only way that counted. He paused to sip his tea, composing himself. Keiko was brilliant. Truly brilliant. She developed logistics algorithms that revolutionized supply chain management. But she never wanted credit, never wanted her name in lights. She just wanted to solve problems, to make things work better. Her patents should have made her famous, but she always insisted on keeping a low profile. She sounds wonderful, Emma said, meaning it with her whole heart. She was, and she would have loved you. Hiroshi's eyes met Emma's directly. Before she died in those last few weeks when the cancer had taken almost everything but her spirit, she made me promise something. She said, "Hiro, don't let grief turn you into stone. Promise me you'll stay soft. Promise me you'll love again if you find someone worth loving." Emma's throat tightened. "Did you promise?" "I did, but I didn't believe it would happen. I couldn't imagine feeling this way about anyone else. It felt like betrayal even to consider it." He reached across the table and gently took Emma's hand. "But then I met you, and I realized loving you doesn't diminish what I had with Keiko. It honors it. She taught me how to love deeply, how to value integrity over profit, how to see people's hearts. Everything she gave me, I'm able to offer to you now." Emma's eyes were streaming. "I'm so afraid I can't live up to her." "You don't have to live up to her. You just have to be you. Emma, you're not Keiko's replacement. You're something entirely your own and equally precious." Hiroshi squeezed her hand gently. "Now tell me about your mother, and about Yuki. I want to know the women who made you who you are." So Emma told him. She told him about growing up in Appalachia, about the grinding poverty that defined her childhood, about a mother who worked herself to exhaustion in the coal mines. "Mama was tough," Emma said, her voice soft with memory. "She had to be, but she was also kind. She'd give away our last can of beans if she saw someone hungrier than us." She told him about the day of the mine collapse, about being 12 years old when the sheriff came to their trailer. The mine had 18 safety violations. Everyone knew it was dangerous, but people were desperate for work, so they kept going down, Mama included. Emma's voice cracked. "The company paid a fine, $20,000. That's what my mother's life was worth to them. $20,000. Hiroshi's hand tightened on hers, offering silent support. Daddy couldn't cope. He started drinking, and the drinking made him angry. By the time I was 16, I had to choose between staying and surviving, so I left." Emma looked down at their joined hands. "I sent him money anyway. Every month, $200, even when I was eating 1 meal a day, because he's still my father, and because Mama would have wanted me to." "That's incredibly compassionate," Hiroshi said quietly. "Or incredibly stupid," Emma replied with a bitter laugh. "He called me Saturday, you know. First time in 3 years. Didn't ask how I was, didn't say he was proud. Just wanted to know if your money could spare some cash for his disability check." "What did you do?" "Hung up on him, then cried for an hour." Emma wiped her eyes. I keep hoping he'll change, that someday he'll be the father I needed. But hope is exhausting when it's never rewarded. Hope isn't stupid, Emma. It's human, but so is protecting yourself. Hiroshi paused. You don't owe him your destruction just because you share DNA. They sat in silence for a moment before Emma continued with Yuki's story. She told him about stumbling into Little Tokyo desperate and alone, about Yuki's immediate acceptance, about 3 years of learning Japanese and culture, and the concept that she was worthy of kindness. Yuki-san used to say that respect is like a garden. You have to tend it daily or weeds take over. She taught me to bow properly, to use honorifics, to understand the concept of omotenashi. But more than that, she taught me that my circumstances didn't define my value. She was right, Hiroshi said, and she would be very proud of what you did that night. I hope so. I hope Mama would be proud too. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. They're the only people whose opinion I've ever really cared about. Until you. The weight of that confession hung between them. Hiroshi brought Emma's hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture so tender and old-fashioned that Emma felt her heart might burst. I'm proud of you, he said simply. So proud. And I want you to know, these next weeks, months, however long it takes, I want to build something with you. Not fast, not rushed, just steady and real. Mrs. Yamamoto brought their food then, beautifully prepared traditional dishes that tasted like home and memory. They ate slowly, talking between bites about everything and nothing. Hiroshi told her about growing up in Osaka, about his own poor childhood, about dreams of changing the world. Emma told him about books she'd read in library corners, about teaching herself to speak properly by watching PBS documentaries, about the college classes she'd dreamed of taking. You should take them, Hiroshi said firmly. Your new position comes with an education stipend. Use it. Study whatever interests you. I'm 29. I'd be the oldest student in every class. So, Emma, life doesn't have a timeline. Keiko went back to university at 35 to get her PhD. She said being older made her a better student because she understood why education mattered. They talked until the restaurant was empty except for them, until Mr. and Mrs. Yamamoto were cleaning the kitchen and pointedly not asking them to leave. Finally, reluctantly, they paid the bill, Hiroshi insisting, Emma arguing, settling on splitting it as equals. On the drive back to Emma's apartment, they held hands across the center console. The easy silence between them felt like a promise of all the conversations yet to come. When Hiroshi walked her to her door, Emma found herself nervous in a way she hadn't been during dinner. This moment felt significant, the threshold between friendship and something more. Emma, Hiroshi said softly, still holding her hand, I want to be very clear about something. I care about you deeply. More than I've cared about anyone since Keiko, but I don't want to rush you. We can go as slowly as you need. What if I don't want to go slowly? Emma whispered. Hiroshi's eyes widened slightly. Then we go at whatever pace feels right. But Emma, I need you to understand. I'm 58 years old. You're 29. People will judge. They'll say terrible things about both of us. About you especially. Are you prepared for that? I've been judged my entire life for being poor, for being uneducated, for being from the wrong place. I survived all of that. Emma stepped closer. And honestly, Hiroshi, I'm tired of letting other people's opinions control my happiness. Aren't you? He smiled, slow and genuine. Yes? Very tired. Then kiss me, Emma said. Please? Because I've been wanting you to since the moment you defended me to your board of directors. Hiroshi cupped her face gently with both hands, his touch reverent. This is important to me. I want to honor both Keiko's memory and your heart, so I'll ask one more time. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed her then, soft and careful, as if she were something precious that might break. Emma's hands came up to grip his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened into something that spoke of loneliness ended, of connection found, of two people deciding to be brave together. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Hiroshi rested his forehead against hers. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered in Japanese. "I fought it for 3 days, thinking it was too fast, too impossible. But I'm falling anyway." "I'm already there," Emma replied in the same language. "I fell the moment you thanked me for pouring your water. Because you saw me when I'd spent years being invisible." They stood in the dingy hallway of Emma's apartment building, holding each other as if the world outside had ceased to exist. And in that moment, it had. And there was no media storm, no class difference, no cultural divide. Just two hearts that had recognized each other across a crowded room and decided to take the risk of connection. 3 months passed in a blur of discovery. Emma started her new position at Tanaka Industries, working from a beautiful office in San Francisco. She developed training programs for companies on cultural sensitivity and respect in international business. Her first client was a Fortune 500 company that paid more for a 2-day workshop than Emma had earned in an entire year as a server. She enrolled in community college classes, Japanese literature and business ethics, attending lectures twice a week. She was indeed the oldest student in both classes, and she didn't care at all. Learning felt like water after years of drought. But more than the job or the education, there was Hiroshi. They saw each other constantly. Dinners, walks along the beach, quiet evenings at his modest house in Sonoma, where they cooked together and talked until midnight. He introduced her to his late wife's family during a video call to Japan, and they welcomed her with tears and open arms. Keiko's mother said in Japanese, "You have kind eyes, Emma-san. Keiko would have liked you very much." Emma introduced Hiroshi to Hanako at Yuki's old restaurant. Hanako cooked them a feast and spent the evening telling stories about Yuki and young Emma. "She was so skinny, so scared," Hanako laughed. But Okasan saw something special. She said, "This one has survived hard things. She'll be strong." They faced challenges. The media attention didn't disappear overnight, though it eventually shifted from scandal to human interest story. Some people still judged, still whispered. Emma's father called again, drunk and demanding. This time, Emma blocked his number entirely, and Hiroshi held her while she cried about it. Marcus Blackwell followed through on his promises. He entered therapy, reformed his business practices, and donated the required money to Keiko's scholarship fund. After 11 months, he sent a letter asking if he and Hiroshi could have coffee. Hiroshi agreed, cautiously. The meeting was awkward but honest, and while they would never be friends again, they found a kind of peace. Now, in mid-December, Emma stood in Hiroshi's living room, looking at the Christmas tree they'd decorated together, a blend of American ornaments and Japanese paper cranes. In a few hours, they were driving to Little Tokyo for a Christmas Eve dinner at Sakura House with Hanako and the Yamamotos. Hiroshi came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "How different my life is from a year ago. Last Christmas, I ate ramen alone in my apartment and tried not to think about how lonely I was. And now? Now I'm here with you. I have a job I love. I'm taking classes. I have a family again. Hanako, the Yamamotos, even your late wife's family welcoming me." Emma leaned back against him. "Sometimes I'm scared I'll wake up and this will all have been a dream." "It's not a dream. It's real. We're real." Hiroshi turned her to face him. Emma, I need to tell you something. Ask you something, actually. Emma's heart began to race at the seriousness in his tone. Okay. Hiroshi led her to the couch and sat, pulling her down beside him. He took both her hands in his, and Emma noticed they were trembling slightly. I've been thinking about timing, about whether it's too soon, too fast. And then I realized I'm almost 60 years old. Life taught me through Keiko's death that tomorrow is never guaranteed. So why wait? He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Emma's breath caught. This was Keiko's grandmother's ring, Hiroshi said, opening the box to reveal a simple gold band with a small pearl. Before Keiko died, she told her mother, "When Hiro finds love again, give him grandmother's ring. Let him know I approve." Tears were streaming down Emma's face. Her mother gave this to me 2 months ago when we visited Japan. She said Keiko would have loved Emma-san. We all love Emma-san. Marry her, Hiro. Let your heart be happy again. Hiroshi slid off the couch and knelt on one knee, traditional and formal despite his age. Emma Catherine Walsh, you came into my life like lightning in a dark sky. Sudden, brilliant, impossible to ignore. You saved me from thieves, yes, but more than that, you saved me from loneliness, from bitterness, from forgetting how to hope. His voice thickened with emotion. I can offer you comfort, security, opportunities, but more than that, I offer you my whole heart. Scarred from loss but healed enough to love again, I promise to see you, truly see you, every single day, to honor your strength and tend to your wounds, to build something together that honors both our pasts while creating a new future. He held out the ring. Will you marry me? Will you be my partner? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the courage you showed me that night? Emma dropped to her knees in front of him, holding his face in her hands. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes, not because you're a CEO, not because you're wealthy, but because you see me, Hiroshi, really see me. Emma from West Virginia, Emma the survivor, Emma the scared girl who learned to be brave. You see all of me and love me anyway. She kissed him through her tears. I love you. I love you so much. Hiroshi slid the ring onto her finger, a perfect fit, as if it had been waiting all along for Emma's hand. They held each other on the floor of his living room, crying and laughing and kissing, while outside the December rain began to fall softly on the vineyards. Keiko would be so happy, Hiroshi whispered. And Yuki too. They're both watching over us, I think. I think so too, Emma replied. And Mama? All the women who loved us, who taught us how to love, who made us who we are, they're all here with us. They stayed on the floor for a long time, holding each other, letting the magnitude of the moment wash over them. Two people who had been alone, who had been lost, who had found each other across impossible divides of culture and class and circumstance. Love, Emma thought, wasn't about being saved. It was about being seen. And she and Hiroshi had seen each other from that very first moment, two lonely souls recognizing their reflection across a crowded, hostile room. That night at Sakura House, surrounded by people who loved them, Hiroshi announced their engagement. Hanako cried and hugged Emma so tightly she could barely breathe. Mrs. Yamamoto brought out special sake that her husband had been saving for decades. They toasted to love, to courage, to second chances, to the women who had shaped them and the future they would build together. And later, driving home through the rain with Hiroshi's hand warm in hers, Emma looked at the simple pearl ring on her finger and thought about how far she'd come. From a trailer in West Virginia to here, from invisible to seen, from alone to beloved. Thank you, she whispered to the rain, to the night, to Yuki and her mother and Keiko and all the ghosts of women who had loved despite hardship. Thank you for teaching me that I was worthy of this. Hiroshi squeezed her hand. What did you say? Just thanking the universe, Emma replied, smiling through happy tears. The universe should be thanking you, Hiroshi said, for being exactly who you are, for being brave when bravery cost everything, for speaking when silence would have been safer. We were both brave, Emma said. You chose to see me. That took courage too. Then we're well matched, Hiroshi replied, bringing her hand to his lips. Two brave hearts deciding to risk everything for love. And outside, the California rain fell soft and steady, washing away the old sorrows, watering the seeds of new joy, promising that morning would come bright and full of possibility. The end was really just the beginning of a marriage built on respect, of a partnership that honored both their histories while creating something entirely new, of proof that love could bloom in the most unexpected places if you were brave enough to tend it. Emma Walsh and Hiroshi Tanaka had found each other in a moment of crisis and chosen each other in every moment since. And that choice, renewed daily with small acts of kindness and understanding, would carry them through all the tomorrows yet to come. This story reminds us that it's never too late to find connection, to speak truth when silence feels safer, or to open our hearts after loss has tried to close them forever. Emma and Hiroshi teach us something profound, that loneliness isn't a life sentence, and that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is simply see another person's humanity when everyone else has chosen to look away. How many of us have stayed silent when we witnessed injustice, convincing ourselves it wasn't our place to speak? How many have closed ourselves off to new possibilities because grief or disappointment made us believe our chapter of joy had already ended? Emma risked everything, her job, her security, her safety, for a stranger, and in doing so, she found not just purpose but love. Hiroshi had convinced himself that his heart had died with his wife, yet he discovered that honoring the past doesn't mean refusing the future. Their story isn't about fairy tale romance. It's about two people who'd survived hard things choosing to be brave together. It's about second chances, about how dignity recognizes dignity across any divide, and about how one moment of courage can change everything. Have you ever spoken up when it cost you something, and how did that moment change your life? Or have you found unexpected connection when you thought your heart had closed for good? Share your story in the comments below. Your courage might inspire someone else to take that leap of faith they've been afraid to take.